want to start off with what is the biggest story and what is a dangerous story and what should bother all Americans, whether you're a Trump supporter or a Joe Biden supporter. I don't care. In several instances over the last few days, supporters of President Trump decided to disrupt traffic. It happened in Texas on Friday, where Trump supporters surrounded a Biden campaign bus. And in New York and New Jersey on Sunday, Trump supporters halted traffic on two major highways. But on Sunday, the FBI said it was investigating this Texas incident, which certainly seems like it was the most troubling, I guess you could say. Mr. Joe Biden described it as an effort to run his team off the road. As I saw video myself, ladies and gentlemen, one car that was filled with Biden interns, I guess you could say, Biden supporter, was run directly off the road. And the car was dented and was hit. And then you have this Joe Biden bus that's just driving down the highway, and they're cornered by these Trump supporters with Trump flags trying to run this bus off the road. Now, if you're in that bus, how would you feel? I'll tell you, I'd be scared out of my mind. And, you know, a lot of Trump supporters, including my co-host, by the way, had a huge problem with Black Lives Matter protests, people blocking the road. I wonder if he'll preach the same tune today when it comes to Trump supporters blocking roads. Jason Miller, who is a complete buffoon, who is one of Donald Trump's advisors, or I shouldn't say advisors, campaigners, asked about New York and New Jersey incidents. He said that he's more concerned about downtown Washington businesses having to board up. So that's whataboutism, ladies and gentlemen. During the Texas incident on Friday, there were multiple vehicles, as I said, that were bearing these Trump flags and signs, surrounded by this Biden-Harris campaign bus. They were heading to San Antonio. And because of this situation, and because of these complete buffoon idiots, whatever you want to call them, these Trump supporters that thought that they could just intimidate and run people off the road, because of that, the Biden campaign had to scrap 2 events and cancel 2 events. Joe Biden said, "We are so much better than this." And he's right, we are. We should be much better than this. But are we? Are we? Listen to this audio. This is a man in Texas recording this Trump train, as it's being called on social media. Listen to them laughing like this is funny. I want you to listen to this audio of the man that was recording this whole situation that took place in Texas with this bus. Have a listen to this.
Okay, folks, it's this Trump train, hundreds of them, holding up on the 35, and they're all following this Biden-Harris bus. Funniest thing I've ever seen, man. They're like chasing him. This is in New Braunfels right now, and they're like, look at this. They're like literally escorting him out of town on the Trump flags. Oh my God, this is the funniest thing I've ever seen. They're like hundreds of them. They're escorting him out. Look at this. They're in front with a Trump train.
Okay, first of all, that guy speaking sounds like he has an IQ of about 20. There's nothing funny. They weren't escorting them out. They were trying to run them off the road. And that's scary. And that's dangerous. And people could get hurt. There's nothing funny about that. So if you're a Trump supporter and you thought that was funny, then you're sick. You're a sick, disgusting, ignorant human being if you thought that was funny. I would be saying the same thing if those were a bunch of Biden supporters that were trying to run over a Donald Trump bus. But guess what? They weren't, because these were Donald Trump supporters. And this isn't about Antifa. And that's the very different thing that I wanted to talk about here. When you talk to Republicans, they're going to talk about Antifa. Many of Antifa, they're not Joe Biden supporters. They're against the government. They want to tear down our government. You don't see Antifa people with a bunch of Joe Biden flags, but they want to attach it to Joe Biden. These were Trump supporters with Trump flags. Make no mistake about it. That's exactly what it was. And this is not a joke. This isn't funny. This isn't funny at all. Yet Donald Trump is defending it. Donald Trump is defending it, and he's saying he doesn't think they did anything wrong. That's right. Trump said about these Texas drivers in a post on Twitter, in my opinion, quote, this is what he said: "The president In my opinion, these patriots did nothing wrong, because apparently you're a patriot when you try to aggressively drive, which is against the law, and throw somebody off the road with your car. Apparently you're a patriot if you do that. That's the definition of a patriot, according to Donald Trump in MAGA country. Trump went on to go after the FBI. He said instead the FBI and justice should be investigating the terrorists, anarchists, and agitators of Antifa who run around burning down our Democrat-run cities and hurting our people. Trump is so predictable. Any type of violence with his supporters, he's going to talk about Antifa. And it's pathetic and it's a joke. And he's normalizing it. He's normalizing it in our democracy. Apparently it's okay to be a Donald Trump supporter and try to run people off the road, including a Joe Biden bus. That's okay. He's calling them patriots. Not only, and by the way, he's done this before. He did the same thing, what was taking place in Portland. Remember? Those people who were shooting stuff at some of these Black Lives Matter protesters. Remember that? Remember Donald Trump called them patriots as well? He likes this sort of thing. This is a positive for him. Remember he tweeted out a video as well with the words, "I love Texas" over the weekend. Is that leadership? Is that what you want in your commander-in-chief? I don't care whether you're a Trump supporter or not. When people are committing crimes, and make no mistake about it, that's exactly what this was. These people were committing crimes. If you don't believe me, just look at the video. Those volunteers that were in a car following the Joe Biden bus were run off the road. Their car was all dented and smashed up. Look at the pictures if you don't believe me. Look at the video if you don't believe me. They were following a few feet in front and behind this bus. That is against the law. You are endangering people on the road, including yourself. These dopes don't even understand that. They have an IQ of 20. And Donald Trump is normalizing this type of behavior. Folks, this is not normal. This shouldn't be about politics. People have a right to campaign. If you don't like Joe Biden, then don't go to his rally. I would say the same thing about Trump rallies. If you're a Biden supporter or a Democrat, you don't like Donald Trump, stay away from his rallies. You're not doing anything better by going or being a disruptor. This is now normalized. And I told you about what took place in New Jersey, New York. On Sunday, there were caravans of Trump supporters that were blocking Cuomo, the Mario M. Cuomo Bridge and the Garden State Parkway, backing up traffic on two of the busiest highways in New York, the metro area, just 2 days before the election. For all of you people that had including my co-host, for all of you Black Lives Matter, anti-Black Lives Matter people out there that have had such a huge problem with these Black Lives Matter protests blocking traffic, where are you now? Ladies and gentlemen, this is called hypocrisy. Guess what? I don't like anybody blocking traffic. I've said that about Black Lives Matter, and now I'm going to say that with these idiot Trump supporters who thought they were doing a good thing. Are you a patriot? Are you a patriot if you're blocking traffic? No, you're an idiot. That's what you are. You're an idiot with nothing better to do with your time than to inconvenience people. You're nothing but a moron. There were videos taken of motorists, showed the president backers parked in the middle of the westbound lanes of this bridge, which carries Interstate 287 across the Hudson River and is named for the father of the current governor, Andrew Cuomo. A number of these people exited their vehicles in the rain and waved Trump banners and American flags as motorists honked their horns. It is unbelievable. State Senator David Carlucci, who's a Democrat who represents Rockland County, called the blockage on the bridge aggressive, dangerous, and reckless, with individuals causing danger to themselves and others. The New York State Police should be working to identify these individuals and charging them, Carlucci said. We all have the right to show support for a presidential candidate, but we do not have the right to endanger others and break the law. Donald Trump, make no mistake about it, is normalizing this type of behavior. He's saying not only is it okay, but they're patriots. But God forbid, if it comes to a Black Lives Matter protest, oh no, they're terrible. They're Marxists. They're terrorists. The FBI should investigate.
That's exactly right.
But guess what? the FBI is investigating this, at least what took place in Texas, and I hope those son of a bitches that decided to try to run people off the road, I hope they all go to jail. We'll see how much of a patriot they are then.
Knock, knock, FBI.
That's right. That's right, orange turd. Knock, knock, FBI. This is disgusting, man. I'm just so sick of this. I want this to all be over with. I really do. And I'm going to explain a little bit later on in the show my opinions on the election, what's going to happen if Biden wins, what's going to happen if Trump wins, from a non-biased opinion, because I'm going to talk about whether either candidate wins. It's not the end of the world. I'll talk about that coming up here in just a little bit. Let me ask you all a question if you don't think this is a problem. I know there's some of you that listen, maybe half of our audience, I don't know, that are Trump supporters. And I know there's probably a portion of this audience that probably doesn't think what these people in Texas did was wrong. So let me ask you the question like this, and I want you to think about this because I think this is very important. Imagine Donald Trump just held a campaign rally. Imagine Trump just held a campaign rally. And imagine there's a lot of people from the campaign that are in a Trump bus. Decked out, Donald Trump bus. Let's just say it happened in Nevada, for example, on the 15. And you see this bus on the 15, and they're driving to another event, say in Henderson. They just did an event in Las Vegas, hypothetically. Let's just say that. All of a sudden, you got about a dozen trucks with Joe Biden flags hanging out of those trucks. And there's at least one car behind the Donald Trump bus. And there are a bunch of Donald Trump volunteers and people who work in the campaign that are in that car. And think for a second, that those Donald Trump's, I should say Joe Biden people in those trucks are trying to ram this car off the road. And they're intimidating. And they're driving aggressively. And they're trying to do the same thing with the Donald Trump bus. Bunch of Biden supporters. What would you say about that? What would you say about that if they did hit one of those vehicles and rammed it off the road? And they were intimidating those that were in this Donald Trump bus. And while all the intimidation is going on, the Trump campaign announced that they had to cancel 2 events, one coming up in Henderson. As a Trump supporter, what would you say about that? You'd be angry, right? You'd be upset. You'd be angry at those Joe Biden supporters committing crimes. You'd be upset. You'd want them brought to justice, right? You probably wouldn't have a problem with it if the FBI decided to investigate it. You want those people brought to justice. You see where I'm going with this, folks? This situation is no different. It's just the opposite. It shouldn't matter whether they were going after a Joe Biden bus with Biden campaign staff or they were going after a Trump bus with Trump campaign staff. It shouldn't matter. There should be no place for this type of behavior in society. And that's why the FBI is investigating. And that's why I personally believe some of these people are going to be brought to justice, and they should be. But the thing that gets me... Something funny?
Yeah, this is funny, Brian.
You think it's funny when people try to ram somebody off the road and hit them?
I think it's funny that this has been happening for about 6 months nationwide. In some cases, like in the middle of when George Floyd, when everything just started with George Floyd, there were people that were literally throwing other people out of their cars. They were standing in the middle of the street.
What does that have to do with Joe Biden and politics?
Because Joe Biden didn't condemn that. It took him 4 months.
Because Joe Biden didn't condemn that. What are you talking about? He's been
condemning
violence. He's been condemning violence for months.
It took him 4 months to condemn that. So
what are you talking about?
Over those 4 months when all this was taking place, Joe Biden was normalizing it.
Okay, so
Joe
you're wrong.
Joe Biden has normalized Antifa by claiming that it doesn't exist.
Joe Biden is not associated with Antifa. Antifa is not Joe Biden supporters.
That Antifa has caused $2 billion in damage to small businesses nationwide, Brian.
So what you just said is ridiculous because it has nothing to do with what
I'm saying. You're accusing Donald Trump of normalizing this
ridiculous.
when Joe Biden certainly normalized it for Black Lives Matter and for Antifa for the first 4 months before he started condemning it. And the only reason he condemned it is because polling showed that he needed to condemn it.
Okay, so yeah, because you can get inside Joe Biden's mind. Okay, so
internal polling, Brian.
Okay, right. I know. I thought you didn't believe in polls. Anyway, first of all, Antifa are not Joe Biden supporters. They want to overthrow the government. That's number one. Number two, we are specifically talking about Donald Trump supporters with Donald Trump flags. Okay, that's number two. Now, if you want to talk about Antifa, you're very predictable because I started the show and I knew you were going to do that. You're extremely predictable.
No, I'm not.
This has not. Yes, you are. I knew you were.
No, you're predictable.
I knew you're going to bring up Antifa.
You're bringing this up.
I knew
you're not bringing up the fact that the FBI allowed Donald Trump to be impeached for being correct about Joe Biden being corrupt.
I have no idea what you're talking about.
You're praising the FBI here.
No idea what you're talking about. We're focused on what actually took place because it's the biggest story, and you failed to address it or condemn it.
It's not the biggest story. It makes Donald Trump look bad.
So
therefore, we're going to talk about it.
So you think this behavior is
this
laughable?
behavior? Have you seen what's been going on for the last 6 months nationwide, Brian?
I'm asking you a
There's
specific
been the most
question.
looting and rioting across the country in the last 50 years. In the last 6 months nationwide. This behavior, Brian. There was a Trump supporter. There was a Trump supporter shot in the head in Portland. There was another one shot in the head.
Do two wrongs make a
in
right?
Denver.
Yes or no?
No Trump supporter has shot anybody else in the head.
Do two wrongs make a right? Do they? Yes or no?
No, do I agree with what that particular truck did? No, of course not.
It wasn't a truck. They were trucks. That's number one. Let's be factually accurate.
That truck, the one truck that was following closely.
There was more than one truck that was following closely. That is a lie.
Let's not forget. The reason Biden canceled this rally or these rallies is because he is down 17 points in the state.
Well, that's just stupid.
No,
you
that's
have no
why
idea what you're talking about.
I absolutely do.
That's just stupid.
I absolutely do.
Okay, well, if you want to make stuff up, that's fine.
I mean, Brian, 9.5 million votes have been cast there. 53% have been by registered Republicans. 36%.
So that's why they canceled.
Yeah, they stand no chance in Texas.
So that's why they canceled.
Absolutely, it was a waste of money at that point,
What you're saying is
Brian.
completely idiotic. Once again,
no, it's reality.
Okay, no, I don't think you have any sense of reality.
He is getting
at all.
demolished in Texas.
Okay,
and the reason why Biden isn't. Now he has Obama doing his rallying or his campaigning for him because nobody cares about Joe Biden.
What does this have to do with the behavior of those Trump
the reason
supporters?
that Joe Biden is not campaigning in more places is because Trump supporters show up and embarrass him publicly.
Okay, so
and it's happened time and time again.
Sure.
Brian.
Oh, I think you're embarrassing yourself time and time
again.
Based
on what?
Based on everything you say. So let me just start off with what we're talking about. Actually, we're not talking about the polls in Texas. We're not talking about Antifa, and we're not talking about George Floyd. For those of you that are just tuning in, JD wants to talk about those things, but we're talking about the Trump train. We're talking about not one truck, as JD said, which is not factually accurate. The FBI is investigating it. There was more than one truck. There were several trucks that were driving erratically and were intimidating and at least hit one car and were trying to pull over the bus. That is why they canceled a few campaign stops the rest of the day. It had nothing to do with polls. And the fact of the matter is, and the evidence speaks for itself, because if you don't believe me, you can watch the video. This has nothing to do with Antifa or George Floyd. These were Donald Trump supporters that were behaving like a bunch of morons. And
that's exactly right.
As I mentioned this earlier, because JD showed up a little late, and I mentioned it again, we only have 2 minutes. But JD has said constantly how much he has a problem with BLM protests blocking roads. In fact, I've heard him say that people should just drive right through them, plow right through them. People that are in roads. I wonder if JD is speaking the same tune with what took place over the weekend in New York and New Jersey as a bunch of Donald Trump supporters blocked major roadways and highways in New York and New Jersey. Do you think people should have just drove right through them, JD? Did you have a problem with that?
I have a huge problem with them doing that. I'm totally fine. Like, for example, in Arizona, there was a 96-mile-long route of cars. Trump supporters in cars, but I have a huge problem with anybody blocking traffic or stopping commerce. I have from day one, whether it's Trump supporters, whether it's BLM, doesn't make a difference.
Would you have just
to me
driven right through them?
What do you mean?
Well, you've said before with BLM, you've seen people block roads. You don't see
Here's the deal. BLM would stand in the middle of the street.
That's exactly what they were doing.
No,
they stopped their car, they get out of their car, and there's evidence.
Their trucks were right there, though. From what I saw, it was a lot of cars in a line. They may have been standing next to their cars, but no one was in a position to drive through them at that point, Brian. BLM didn't have cars. They were just standing in the middle of the street. They were blocking stoplights.
So let me get this right.
Regardless, Brian, I have a problem with either.
Okay.
I have a major problem,
actually,
with blocking commerce.
Gotcha.
Or preventing people from traveling from spot to spot. I've said that from day one.
Okay, so we got to take a break.
Okay.
So in other words, if you're a Trump supporter and you're intentionally blocking a street and getting out of your car, don't run them over. But if you're BLM protesters without a car, you can run them over.
Well, here's the deal, Brian.
We got to take a break.
They would have tried to run them over, and they would have run into a truck.
Okay, so we got to take a break.
So it's a little different.
I got your opinion, JD. I'm not surprised.
It's absurd, right?
All right.